Hello and welcome to this yet another special edition of Credible Talks, which we are doing in the run-up to the Incredibles 2020-21. As we have already promised that the Incredibles is not just an award series, it's also an exercise to understand, dig deep into the idea of influencers and their marketing campaigns. And that's why we're not just looking at it from the industry perspective, we're also trying to find out the perspective of academics, or rather from the academic point of view, what this subject is and how it's been seen. And we have today with us a special guest. He is Stephen King. He's a lecturer advertising, branding, and digital media at the Middlesex University Dubai. He is fortunately also a jury in the Incredibles 2020-21. We're very glad to have him on board. We'll try and understand from him his perspective on the subject of influencer marketing. So let me first of all begin by welcoming Stephen. Stephen, thank you so much for taking out time and having this conversation with us.
Thank you very much. Shuja, to be part of this jury. I'm really looking forward to seeing all the wonderful campaigns and to having discussions with the other jury members.
What do you understand from influencer marketing and the industry that exists at this point, at this time, in particularly in the digital age or the storytelling age? What's your understanding of influencer marketing and industry?
Okay, so I think influencer marketing is an exciting topic. I think that the advertising and marketing industry in general is very good at rebranding and renaming practices to make them modern and more contemporary. And I think that might be also what's happened with influencer marketing, because in the past we've had something called opinion leadership and targeting and communicating and engaging with stakeholders who are considered opinion leaders. And there are many similarities between the old practice of opinion leaders as we have with the influencers. Maybe the medium has changed, maybe the reach and the power of the opinion leaders has changed, but there's a lot of similarities between opinion leaders and influencers. And in the past, the opinion leaders used to be the journalists, business leaders, academics, government officials, celebrities, everyone that you'd find in the Edelman Trust Barometer. And that's where we had sports celebrity sponsorships and endorsements, and the whole practice of public affairs all came out on the back of that. So it's possible that we can look at what an influencer is today as what we used to call as an opinion leader, and many of the approaches that we used to take for opinion leaders can be transferred to the influencer. There's a lot more commercial, obviously, imports in the influencers today. And we're looking at influencers, and these are people who are supposedly, according to literature, exerting strong influences on consumers' attitudes and behaviors. In the past, this was done by word of mouth. Today, we need to take into account the huge social megaphone that is TikTok, Snap, Instagram, and all these other channels that are out there. And whereas in the past, there was the celebrity status or the expert status, which was conveyed on people by cultural capital, by weight of maybe their degree, by their achievements. Today, the influencers are being born or being groomed because of in different fashions, but in the similar sense that they have superior status. They present themselves in a way which creates this social prestige, which is appealing to the mass public. And they're also able, using various social media, videography, and editing tools, to display expertise, which is helping to present themselves in an influential way and to lead opinions. So that gives you a broad strokes of where I think it's a good thing. I think it's a development of an old practice. I think it's a revolution in that respect, or an evolution in that respect.
Stephen, you teach media, you teach advertising, branding to your students. So, what's the theory about influencers? What does it say? What do you, in your conversations talk about?
Yeah, so there's a lot of really interesting pieces on influencer marketing out there, and I'm just to source one study, which is a meta-analysis of so many studies that have been published, and I'll send you the contacts, and you can put the citation and the reference in the speaking notes. But one of the exciting things on this is that the influencer marketing hits the passive consumer. So this fits a very, very nice part of your marketing communications mix. When people is someone seeking a product, then they're easy to hit with your Google AdWords, with all the Google search tools, all of your traditional. Did I say Google is traditional? All of your traditional AdWords, voice, all the big database digital marketing. So this is when people are actually looking at for things. That's your active consumer. But when people aren't active, then that's a wonderful segment of consumer, because these are people who perhaps don't know they need your product yet. They don't know what your product is. They might not need it right now, but they will want it in the future. And because they are passive customers, if they see something, they will make a spontaneous buy. And this spontaneous buy is not going to be subject to rigorous search of comparison of price engines or what have you. Maybe they might, but generally wasn't. And so you could potentially get a higher price premium from them, and you can spur purchases from people who are not wanting that particular product right now. So that's quite interesting. That's in there. So it complements the big data marketing. Although there is certainly some, obviously, some analysis, some research that goes into picking the influencers themselves. In terms of theory, we look at things such as the emotional bond that influencers are able to create with their audiences, and that's where the influencer's power comes from. And the literature says that this power is created by satisfying the needs of the consumer by presenting a fantasy, an ideal situation which is inspirational for the audience. There's a movie which is going to come out soon by a gentleman named Astri Bendasha. He did the Follow Me documentary on Netflix, which is all about influencers. He's created a new movie which is called Pursuit of Greatness, and in this movie, he presents how rap artists, the R&B movement in the US, have to present themselves in a really idealistic way, throwing money, false money. He does a whole thing on the fake money that people get
Right,
introduced to. Does. And if they were to present their real lives, how depressing and how hard it is to work their way up, their music would not get the same audience. So they have to present this idealistic scenario, even if it's not true. And that's what helps them to create a following. The other things that you have to do is these influencers show similarity to the audience. They can't, although it's a fantasy environment they're creating, they also have to be something which is relevant to the consumer. There has to be some kind of we can't be too far distance. I have to be able to achieve what you have, and some enjoyability, careful curation of information and content, which then helps to show competence. I'm unfortunately started to watch Cooking with Paris. Paris Hilton was one of the original influencers, I think we can all say, from way back then. She has this new show on Netflix right now where she does a cooking show. And obviously she meets many of these criteria. She shows this idealistic kitchen, this beautiful kitchen. She's going to bring in friends who are celebrities. But when she cooks like you, me, or maybe, anyone. She just gets cake mix from a pan, from a packet, puts it together. And that creates this kind of pseudo friendship, this pseudo relationship. I could, I do that. I do the same as Paris, but I wish I lived in her house. And that helps to create that emotional and what we call a parasocial interaction and an illusory friendship. That's how they keep it going. You notice how many influencers will say that they comment on every single response they get in every question. It's not just helping them on their algorithms. It's also helping to reinforce this illusory pseudo friendship that they're creating with their followers.
Okay. Yeah. So that also, I also want to ask you there that yes, so there is emergence of influencer marketeers, but also there are questions asked on the authenticity, on the credibility, and the fact that there perhaps is no code that governs such practices of marketing. Do you think that there should be regulations, there should be codes that should emerge to govern such practices in marketing?
Yeah, I mean, the research does cover into this as well. It does explore and how it impacts the perceived value of content and the authenticity of the content. And I think if I'm saying it correctly, uh, the where there are clear advertising messages, this is by advertising, but it's subtle. It's not rammed into the eyeballs with the disclaimer at the beginning that this is an advertising message. If there's just a subtle Instagram, this is a paid for post, this is accepted and is welcomed by customers. Where they get put off is where it is blatantly said at the beginning and apologized for by the influencer, says this is sponsored by this particular post. They that, according to the literature on the research, turns people off. I watch a lot of movie reviews and TV reviews on YouTube, and many of these influencers now are getting sponsored within their post, and they have to stop the show and say, "Well, this show is sponsored by, and I thank you, this particular company," and immediately I'm forwarding it straight forward past that section. But
Mhm.
whereas if it was just a simple, this has got some sponsorship from a certain product, the literature says that that works quite nicely. The other thing that research has shown is that if you just have a product, just a product unboxing without a person in the product, then that isn't welcomed. They want to see the influence of themselves in with the product, and that is something which was
Mhm.
acceptable. Um, uh, do not have one more watch out that the literature also says is do not control your influencer's voice. So I know a lot of brands would want to stipulate you must do this and must do that, and you must have 5 different shows of a certain product, and you can't say these words, or you must use this particular phrasing. That's supposedly a big no-no, because that just diminishes the whole value of taking on the influencer. You may as well
Right.
use your corporate. You may as well just use a normal corporate spokesperson and come out there and talk. So you have to, if you're going to go in with an influencer and you're going to sponsor a piece of content, you have to trust that that influencer is going to produce something because they know their audience better than you. Um,
Right.
should it be regulated? I think it should. I think there's a certain need for regulation. A lot of money in this, and I think where there's a lot of money, we need to have it needs to be looked. There are cases where money laundering has been identified under influencers, and so I think that there is a need. This is there's a lot of money. People need to be responsible with it, and therefore I think a certain level of regulation is
Mhm.
good for everybody.
Interesting. I also want to sort of delve into there's this is an emerging market, and there are lots of viewpoints that people have. Some say it's just probably a bubble that will burst in a while from now, and others say that influencer marketing is here to stay. What do you understand from that?
I think that the figures are all saying that it's growing and it's here for a while. I mean, as I mentioned before, it might transform into something else, but it's not going to die. I mean, we had opinion leaders in the past. We've now got influencers today. A couple of years ago, in 2019, the US study says 50% of internet users follow some sort of influencer account. So if that gives you that description, gives you that indication, and 40% of US consumers have bought a product after seeing it on Instagram or YouTube. Before that, 90, and that's growth from 19% from the year before. And so this is growing. 80% of US marketers had influencer marketing in their outreach in 2018. And that is, the words are, it will expect to surge this decade. And I would agree with that. I think the number of my students that are graduating and going into influencer marketing and succeeding is it's we're on that part of the curve now.
Hmm. Okay. Also, what are the the fields? I mean, the fields of interest in this subject. What are the fields of interest in this subject that you get from your students or those who want to learn?
I think one of the biggest challenges that the research has at the moment is that it's heavily weighted towards the US. And it's also heavily weighted in terms of academic research. I mean, practitioners are doing their own thing because they know what their clients want. But from an academic perspective, almost all of the studies are focused on the US. So whatever we're getting from these statistics, we have to bear in mind that it's coming from that kind of a mindset and that kind of a market. The other interesting thing is that academics tends to take some time before it gets published. So at the moment, the studies are really focusing on YouTube and Instagram. Only 1% of studies that have been published have looked at WeChat, which, when you consider the Chinese market, that tells you
Mhm.
something. So there are enormous areas of Snapchat, of TikTok, which are to come, which in terms of academic research, there's a major black hole that's there to be looked at. And can these be looked at in the same way? What things are people looking at? Similar to what the advertising agencies would hope. What makes an influencer exciting or relevant? What engagement strategies work and why, and how do you measure whether your influencer marketing is succeeding or not? And there are studies on such things you mentioned: credibility, content, what content should be there, and also the advertising disclosure, the ethics behind the whole thing. Those are three key areas on top of that what people are looking into.
Okay, Stephen, we were really glad that you are part of the Incredibles this year. As jury, what are your expectations from those who are sending out their entries for this competition?
Yeah, so I'm I mean, I mentioned in the video before purpose. So purpose could be different aspects. You could look at it from a social purpose, which is something which is my own personal bias, if you like. I understand that this particular communication medium and strategy in the way that it is presently is quite young. But I would like to see how that companies are using influencers to help champion social causes, social good. We have the IPCC report just come out on climate change this last week, I think, or the last couple of days. We have the COP coming up. I would like to see how all this, how some of these, how some of these brand purpose are being communicated through the influencer marketing. I'm very excited with TikTok. I'm very excited with all of these short videos and all of the explainer videos and the makeup videos and the music videos. But I'd also be very interested. I've got plenty of time to enjoy some of the longer form content. So I'd
Okay.
like to see who's investing, because that is an indication, in some respects, of more money going into the market. It's very that's what that'd be interested to see, whether or not people are actually going to develop more in IGTV or what we're doing in live or in podcasting, or those are other areas which I think are exciting to look at.
One last thing. This is the first time we're doing this in India. It's a first of its kind event that is focused on influencer marketing. Also, first time that we are having an exercise where a jury which is exclusively global in nature. I mean, people from like you from across the countries are judging Indian campaigns. As a thought, what does it look like to you?
I'm thinking that it's going to be I mentioned earlier that a lot of the studies have been done on the US market. Some of them are done in Scandinavia, or what have you. So from the external, our interest is to see what's working in India. Right, so this is going to be really exciting. We're going to have our own personal experiences, but we're going to be seeing whether or not what we see outside is reflected in India, or perhaps you're doing some amazing work there which we've never thought of. So I anticipate that because of this vacuum of knowledge, we're going to see some amazing campaigns that have not been thought of before. And because of the diaspora of India, these particular campaigns are going to be so valuable for transferring around the world.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for taking our time for this conversation. We love your jacket. It's an influencer jacket, so to speak, right?
Try to practice what we preach. Eh? I don't know whether I do it very well.
We love it. And we are really looking forward to lots of such conversations with you, and of course, lots of learning from you all. Thank you so much for taking our time again.
Thank you very much, Shuja. Thank you very much.